Mountains with cliffs and dense vegetation surround the hidden structures. The place looks secluded, majestic, and dangerous. The abandoned temple is hidden among the rocks. Dark trees and devastation add to the sense of desolation and unease. The exhausted boy tells his interlocutor to leave him alone. The tension between them is obvious. Both look tired and wounded. The hands of the heroes grind an unknown substance in a mortar. The jagged movements and scars emphasize their grave condition. The girl, with blood on her lips, sarcastically offers to eat the candy. Her behavior seems strange and unpredictable. She laughs, whereupon a young guy roughly pushes her, whereupon she falls to the ground. The young man explains that it is a medicinal paste, not a sweet. He is serious, but the woman clearly does not understand him. The woman lies on the ground and laughs, finding the situation amusing. He decides to give up trying to explain anything. The hero reflects on how horrible this place is. It is full of suffering and madness. This place has been called a horrible place, filled with pain and madness. It seems to be the living embodiment of despair, destroying all who remain here. The crowd of mutilated people moves as one. The place resembles a freak museum where suffering has become the norm. The atmosphere is saturated with horror and madness. The young man, looking around at his surroundings, ponders why he is here. The thought is accompanied by a sudden realization or flash of fear, which emphasizes his alienation. Someone in the crowd boldly asks to play together. The request sounds strange and alarming, as if it carries a hidden threat. A man attacks a girl, promising it will be not for long. His malevolent smile and aggressive behavior create tension and terror. The assembled people look on with crazed smiles, laughing at what is happening. Their laughter sounds ominous, reflecting the absolute loss of humanity. The young man, hearing giggles and strange noises, continues to work in silence. A feeling grows inside him that everything around him is not real. He thinks that everything here is an illusion. Reality seems fake to him. Everything around him is a lie. He holds an object stained with something dark in his hands and quietly repeats the idea that everything is fake. The words reflect his distrust of reality. The object is thrust with force into the enemy's head. The painting is filled with blood and anger, showing that the young man's rage has reached its limit. A young man throws his attacker off a cliff. He realizes that it is all a fantasy, but he fights to remain himself in this chaos. A young man stands next to the girl, protecting her. His cold stare and threatening gesture make his opponent retreat, writhing in pain. The attacker shouts that the young man will not escape retribution. He mentions a master who will deal with him and punish him for everything. The young man, on the other hand, says that the master means nothing to him. His words sound defiant. He is clearly not afraid of threats. The enemy looks at the young man in horror. He can't believe that someone would dare to speak like that about a master. The crowd watches in silence. The sounds of the fight make them tense, but no one dares to intervene. Footsteps break the silence. A man in white enters, addressing the young man and girl. He informs them that the master is summoning them. The boy and girl are silent, but their expressions betray distrust and fatigue. The atmosphere around them heats up. The assailant starts shouting again that the young man is finished. He declares that it is now his turn to suffer. The young man silently observes the situation, preparing for his next move. His calmness contrasts with the chaos around him. The girl's hand gently grasps the young man's clothes. She doesn't want to let him go, clinging to the last vestiges of hope. The girl begs the young man not to leave. Her gaze is full of fear and despair, but he looks away, trying not to show his feelings. Walking down a dark hallway, they follow a man in white. The girl walks staggering along, and a sarcastic, "There's candy in there" sounds nearby. The group moves deep into the gloomy cave. The silhouettes look tired, but the young man's determination remains unwavering. The girl, turning around, looks back with uncertainty. Her eyes reflect an inner fear and a desire to return. A wide cave engulfs their figures. The nature around them seems indifferent to their suffering, adding more gloom. The young man reflects on his actions. He wonders why he was so hurt by what happened and reproaches himself for his emotions. He tries to regain control of himself. Reminding himself that his temper is far from emotional, he tries to focus. Someone touches his back. It's a soft, almost timid gesture that causes him brief confusion. The young man sighs deeply, closing his eyes. He convinces himself to stay calm so he can move on. The girl's hand grasps the young man's clothes tenaciously. Her actions seem decisive, despite their strangeness. The young man asks in bewilderment what she is doing. His face expresses a mixture of annoyance and surprise, but the girl continues her strange ritual. A strange lump appears in her hand, covered in something dark. She holds it up as if offering something of value. A girl with a grim smile asks if he wants candy. Her appearance is frightening in its unnaturalness, and her gestures only add to the sense of danger. The young man looks at her demurely, observing her strange behavior. He seems calm, but his gaze is full of hidden anxiety. The girl continues to giggle at the mention of the master. Her words sound like strange praise, but they also carry something ominous. The phrase, "the master gave us candy," emphasizes her madness. Her voice is one of joy mixed with a touch of obsession. A young man and a girl walk across the dark ground, surrounded by glowing sparks. Their footsteps are silent, but the tension between them grows. The young man's attention is drawn to something overhead. His gaze becomes sharp, ready for any turn of events. Huge flames burst out of the furnace, creating a chaotic red glow. They watch the spectacle. They approach a man in green clothes sitting at a column in the cave. The girl turns to the man in green clothing, calling him master. The master turns to her, greeting his apprentice. He is unhappy with the weight and expresses it with a mocking smirk. The master rushes into the air with incredible strength, heading downward with aggression. He descends before them with a loud bang. His strength and ferocity are emphasized. A young boy and girl stand in front of a master who demonstrates his dominance. The young man stares at the scene, remaining focused but tense. The master attacks the girl with force, striking her with his hand. The girl flies back from the master's blow, expressing shock and pain. The master is screaming with a mad grin, opening his mouth in sheer ecstasy. He is clearly enjoying his power and what is happening around him. The master uses a magical technique, summoning spiritual power. He shouts, and bursts of energy begin to spread around him. The girl stands surrounded by bloody streams with a sarcastic smirk, noticing with irony that the liquid resembles sugar syrup. The girl is lying on the ground, obviously badly wounded, but still finds the strength to say ironically, "Master is the best." Her face expresses a mixed feeling of despair and submission. The master stands over the girl, blood all around her, creating a gruesome scene. She looks emaciated, and the master continues to gloat. The master shouts, calling for the cauldron to be fired up to begin condensing the pills. His determination and belief in success is evident from the look on his face. A young man stands on the battlefield, bloody sparks flying around him. He looks tired, but his gaze is determined to keep going. The young man lifts his head, and his gaze is full of hatred and determination not to give up, despite all his wounds and fatigue. Two masked men smile ominously as they pour something blood red from a huge cauldron. Their actions look like part of a sinister ritual. Red liquid flows from the cauldron into the bowl. The master smells something delicious brewing. Standing in front of the raging flames, the master asks a question, recalling that someone had called him a farting Taoist. He is clearly offended and does not intend to let it go unanswered. The master, with a smirk, wonders if there is any truth in these words. His gaze is full of sarcasm and displeasure. The young man lowers his head and claims that the voice, the smell, and everything else is not real. His facial expression expresses skepticism and inner struggle. The master shouts with madness in his eyes, demanding an answer. His expression left no doubt that he was angry and waiting for obedience. The young man is shaken by inner tension and, despite the situation, repeats indignantly that everything around him is fake. He is filled with rage and determination. The young man again shouts out that it is all a lie, but suddenly mysterious figures appear in front of him. They surround him, and the young man exclaims in surprise. Against the backdrop of exploding lights, he insists again that everything is fake. He feels like the world is collapsing around him. The young man opens his eyes, determination readable in his gaze. He seems to be preparing to accept reality or to fight on. Lying in a hospital bed, the young man regains consciousness and realizes that he is still here. His gaze expresses fatigue, but also a willingness to move on. In front of a tall building, someone asks how Huang is experiencing the illusion this time. He replies that everything remains the same and he does the same. Huang's eyes look tired, and he faintly says, "Just." A man in a white coat with a notepad asks him what he wanted to say, not understanding his reticence. Huo is silent, but then utters, "Did I tell you about Disciple Wang?" His face shows a mixture of sadness and bewilderment. Huo tells us that this bald master brutally killed a man in front of him and then used him to prepare pills. His words are full of pain and disgust. The doctor reacts thoughtfully, saying, showing that he's hurt by this, but he's not sure how to respond. Huo asks Dr. Li to explain the meaning of all these different illusions. He hopes that it all has some meaning and significance. The doctor refuses the explanation, rising from his seat. He says he doesn't need to worry about these things, but rather focus on the duration of each illusion and his mental stability. Dr. Li continues by pointing out that Huo no longer suffers from hallucinatory perception syndrome, HPPS. He reminds Huo to remember an important rule. The doctor's last words are garbled, but it emphasizes, "It's not real. Don't let yourself get caught up in this world again." The doctor, as he leaves, reminds, "By the way, whenever you enter an illusion, remember to act according to the plot." The doctor continues, adding that this is the only way he can get out of the hospital as soon as possible. He walks away, leaving the young man pensive. The girl says with a smirk, heard that. She is clearly joking with Huo, emphasizing the doctor's instruction. Huo looks at her with a tired expression, but does not disagree with her words. The girl adds with a smile, "Obey the doctor obediently, right?" Her image is presented as Huo's childhood love. The name is Yang Na. He says her name, Nana. His gaze is a mixture of joy and tenderness, showing that they have known each other for a long time. Nana sits down next to his bed, preparing to support him. The situation is clearly difficult for him, but her presence helps him. A close-up of Nana's face can be seen. She looks at him caringly, trying to cheer him up. Nana, with a slight smile, tells Huo that his smile is ugly. Instead of being offended, smiles and laughs easily, which creates a friendly and warm atmosphere between them. Nana looks in the bag, telling him not to laugh, because she brought him something. Nana proudly displays the textbook assigned by the teachers for the 6th year as if it were something important. He, clearly surprised, asks, "Nana, we've been friends since childhood, so you're taking revenge on me?" Nana hits him over the head with the book with a smile, dismissing his assumptions and stating, "Of course not." Huo holds up the book, a slight confusion evident on his face, and Nana says, "And..." Nana, glowing with joy, pulls out a gaming device and says excitedly, "This is it." He reaches for the device, but Nana, teasing him, says, "Call me big sister and it's yours." He, facing Nana, says, "Sister." He picks up the device happily, saying, "You really are my sister." A young man playing on the device tells Nana that she doesn't realize how boring it is to be in a mental hospital every day. He, holding up a game console, utters, "Even if I don't go crazy, this is going to choke me." The girl, slightly embarrassed, reminds him, "Play less. Don't forget to do your homework. And don't forget what you promised me." The young man stares at the console, his eyes filled with thoughtfulness. His gaze reads realization and remembrance. He looks up at the girl, repeating, "I remember." The young man moves closer to her, reminding her, "We agreed to go to the same college." He reaches closer, their faces becoming almost on the same level. The girl looks at him, dumbfounded by his words. The young man suddenly pulls her to him and hugs her. He whispers, "I'll get well, Nana." She, snuggling against him, closes her eyes and whispers, "Get well? I'll wait for you." Huo then says, "It's getting late. Let me walk you to the hospital gate." Nana looks at him and simply replies, "Okay." The young man stands up, but his steps look uncertain and it seems as if he is on the verge of losing his balance, as if his legs are failing him. The young man looks worried and puzzled. He stands up, holding his head, and lets out a faint groan. His condition is clearly deteriorating. A young man notices an object on the table. His attention is drawn to something strange. In a panic, the young man notices that there is a medical pestle in front of him, which stuns him. The girl notices his condition and anxiously asks him what is going on and whether he is all right. The young man reflects on the fact that he followed all the doctor's instructions and does not understand what went wrong. The young man, despite his anxiety, tries to lighten the atmosphere and cheerfully asks if he scared the girl by making a peace gesture. The girl frowns and, angry, rebukes him for still acting like a child. She is not happy and turns away, making a disgruntled sound. The young man tries to say something, but doesn't manage to. He looks at the table and doubts what he just saw. Huowang calls out to Nana and asks her to wait for him. And after he leaves, there is a strange glow coming from the box on the table. Huowang follows Nana down the street and asks her not to be angry. He says he just wanted to make her happy, but Nana continues to ignore him. At one point, a strange laughter sounds outside and several patients start laughing. Huowang continues to follow Nana and asks her not to be angry. He wonders if she's really ignoring him. Nana touches his face in surprise, pushing him lightly on the cheek. She promises she'll come back next week and asks him to take care of himself in the hospital. The young man answers her okay, smiling a little. Nana waves goodbye to Huowang, who is watching her through the hospital fence. She looks happy and free in the sunlight. Huowang stays in his hospital clothes and stares at her, thinking about how much he wants to leave the hospital. Huowang walks down the hospital corridor, immersed in his thoughts. He recalls the scene in the ward where he saw a strange object, a medicine mortar. It worried him because it could mean that his condition was worsening. Huowang walks down the corridor of the hospital, wondering if his health has deteriorated. He worries that if it does, he won't be able to leave the hospital in time to attend the university entrance exam with Nana. He tries to reassure himself by reminding himself that he is being treated by Dr. Lee, whom his father has found to be the best specialist. At some point, his patience runs out, and he exclaims irritably that he is fed up with all this. Huowang's face expresses fatigue and despair, and he feels a growing uneasiness. His eyes are full of anxiety, and something seems to be going wrong, as if something mysterious is looming over him. Suddenly, he notices something in his shirt pocket. This perplexes him, and he reaches for the object in surprise, not realizing what exactly it could be. Huowang gingerly looks at what is in his pocket. His eyes widen with surprise, and fear can be seen in them. It's like something abnormal, his perception begins to distort. In his hands, he finds a strange object that resembles a candy in syrup given to him by an older friend. But something is wrong. He feels strange vibrations and shadows begin to appear around him, causing a growing sense of unease and danger. Huowang is confused as he tastes the contents in his hands. He wonders if his hallucination has materialized in reality. The substance does taste sweet, which makes him even more alarmed. Huowang realizes that he must urgently tell Dr. Lee what has happened. He rushes to run down the hospital corridor, holding the strange substance tightly in his hands. As he runs, his foot breaks abruptly, as if he suddenly realized something. Huowang wonders if all of this is real. There was more to his hallucinations than just sweet syrup. He begins to suspect that all the visions may have carried more than he had imagined. His eyes take on a strange gleam as he realizes that what has happened could be his opportunity. His face lights up with a maddening smile, and a risky plan seems to be brewing in his mind. He feels a strange excitement at the thought. The landscape changes abruptly, revealing a view of high mountains with dense vegetation. A medicine mortar is seen on the ground, and other small items are nearby. One of the people present speaks, turning to the others, asking if they have money. This person is clearly looking for something specific and is interested in material things. The man in the center of the group explains that he needs money, gold, silver, or jade pendants. He states that these items do not belong here and asks to borrow them for a while, as their owners will not be able to use them anyway. The people in the group stare silently at what is happening, their faces looking uncertain and wary. They are clearly not happy about the request, but none of them dares to object. The man who asked the question sighs disappointedly, realizing that this group has no money. He contemptuously calls them drug addicts who can't carry anything of value and turns away, clearly frustrated by their uselessness. The man referred to as Lee's older brother looks tense, as if he recognized someone. A girl with white hair turns to Lee's older brother, asking him to come over for a moment. She holds out her hand, trying to get his attention. Big brother Lee stands some distance away, leaning against a tree and looking down. He sees the girl and turns to her, feeling somewhat suspicious. The girl carefully removes the gold bracelet from her leg. She holds out the bracelet to Big Brother Lee and asks if it's enough. Her face expresses slight concern. She is trying to please and impress. She hopes that her offer will be accepted. Lee's older brother kneels down to take the bracelet from the girl's hands. The light illuminates their faces, creating an almost dramatic atmosphere. Big Brother Lee examines the bracelet, pondering its value. He notices that the bracelet is thin but quite heavy. Despite its appearance of fragility, the bracelet appears to be made of gold. He finally smiles, admitting that the bracelet is quite nice. Laughing, he promises that he will borrow this gold bracelet and return it later. His expression has become less tense and there is some playfulness in it. He gives the girl a lollipop, claiming that it is sweet and edible. The girl thanks him gratefully, and there is a slight naivety in the gesture. Lee's older brother is clearly in control of the situation, and the girl seems vulnerable and dependent on him. A group of men in the back observe the scene with some derision. One of them remarks that he had hoped to see something more interesting. The others are also indifferent, their interest in what is happening gradually fading. Suddenly, a senior disciple appears, standing on a dais, and asks everyone present what they are doing here. His presence suddenly attracts the attention of all who were in the place and causes some excitement. The older apprentice continues his stern tone, demanding that everyone return to their work. He looks down with arrogance, showing that he is not satisfied with their inaction. His facial expression causes tension among those present. The older apprentice watches the others as they begin to hastily follow his orders. The crowd of disciples scatter in different directions to avoid the wrath of their mentor. Someone whispers that this man is an inner disciple, emphasizing his high status. An older disciple notices Brother Lee in the distance and says his name with interest. The older apprentice says that, unfortunately, some of those present cannot be used as medical ingredients for his master. His words sound cruel and cold. He clearly has no pity for those he considers useless. His attitude further emphasizes the difference in status between him and the others. Brother Lee, pondering, tries to remember the name of the senior disciple. He assumes his name is Xianyang. There is a mixture of concern and respect in his voice, as if this person is a danger to him. Xianyang scoffs and demands that everyone return to their work or else they will be punished. He threatens that if the medicine for the master is not ready on time, they will pay dearly for it. On his clothes you can see a jade pendant that shines brightly in the light. This item stands out for its value and symbolizes the high status of the wearer. Brother Lee notices this jade pendant and wonders if it is an antique. His interest in the pendant grows and he is clearly interested in the item. Brother Lee's smile becomes more sly as he decides that the pendant will soon be his. He is clearly up to something risky and sees this pendant as an opportunity for himself. Determination appears in his eyes and he seems ready to act despite the danger. Deep in the night, around 3 o'clock, Lee approaches Xianyang's cave. Lee decides this is the perfect time for his plan. Lee notices that things are going much easier than he expected, as Xianyang is not in the cave. He is amazed at his good fortune and thinks it's a good sign. Lee finds a jade pendant and looks at it in the light. He thinks that if he can sell the pendant, he will be able to pay for his and Nana's school fees. For him, the pendant symbolizes hope for a better future. Lee runs off with the pendant, feeling joy and relief. The words, "my jade pendant," echo in his head as he hurries away with the loot. His joy is interrupted when he notices something unusual up ahead. At one of the turns, Lee sees a bright light, and it causes him to stop. He cautiously approaches the light, suspecting that there might be someone ahead. Anxiety grips him, and he decides to proceed cautiously. Lee wonders if there is someone up ahead, and his voice sounds quiet. He stares intensely into the darkness, trying to make out silhouettes. Suddenly, Xianyang appears and addresses Lee sarcastically, calling him little brother. He asks what Lee is doing here at this late hour. His presence is unexpected by Lee, causing the latter to be startled. Lee, realizing that his plan has failed, struggles to remain calm. He tries to talk himself out of it, but his nervous expression gives away his true intentions. Xianyang accuses Lee of trying to escape. Xianyang attacks Lee, shouting threats. Lee receives a blow that causes him to recoil backwards sharply. Xianyang declares that if Lee does not go with them, he will die here. He has no intention of letting Lee go and threatens to kill him. The situation becomes critical, and Lee realizes that he has almost no options left for escape. Lee is suddenly confronted by Xianyang, who appears in front of him. Lee is stunned and calls him Big Brother Xianyang, and his expression is tense and surprised. Xianyang looks at Lee intently, clearly not expecting to see him like this. Xianyang notices that Lee is wearing the clothes of a medicine man. He holds a lamp in his hand and, through a slight chuckle, says that Lee is lucky. His words are filled with sarcasm, and he seems to despise everything that is going on. Lee and 2 other men hurriedly run down the lighted stairs. One of the men, holding a torch, calls out to Lee to join him to escape from this horrible place. He says that the guard has already been neutralized and they have a chance to get out. Lee is stunned by the escape plans. He looks scared and worried. He barely has time to realize that these people are going to risk their lives and leave this place. His gaze clearly shows doubt and anxiety. Suddenly, Lee's mouth is closed, preventing him from continuing to speak. His eyes are wide with fright, and he clearly realizes that the situation is getting out of control. Xianyang violently threatens Lee, saying that he will die here if he doesn't join them. He argues that Lee must not betray their plans and prevent them from escaping. Lee lies on the ground, his face contorted in pain and his eyes staring into the void. He contemplates what is happening, complaining about the confusion of the situation. Lee is convinced that it could all be a hallucination and is sure that he can always return to the hospital. Lee opens his eyes, his face wet with sweat and his eyes full of anxiety. He tries to understand what is happening and realizes that it is as if he has passed from one world to another. He finds it hard to believe that what is happening is real. Now Lee is lying in a hospital room, strapped down, his face full of despair. He stares at the ceiling and thinks about being back in the real world again. Lee feels helpless, tied to the bed, unable to move. Lee continues to ponder, assuming that the nurse is probably asleep right now. He can't check to see if he was able to retrieve the jade pendant and gold bracelet. The situation looks grim, and Lee is left alone, pondering what happened, unsure if it was all real. Lee, resigned to the circumstances, decides to postpone further investigation and check things out later. He makes his decision without losing faith in his actions. Lee is then shown falling into deep darkness, as if falling into an abyss. The fall symbolizes his transition to another state of consciousness or world. Lee's face shows determination and his eyes fill with a bright red light. This indicates the activation of his power or the awakening of his hidden potential. Lee stands alone in an empty place, noticing that everyone has already left. He wonders if the others have left him and where they have gone. Lee smirks, convinced that his hallucinations can't hurt him. He is ready to move forward, despite the unusual and difficult situation. We are shown a majestic mountain illuminated by the first rays of the sun. A voice is heard in the room, urging everyone to get up and stop sleeping. The order sounds, and Lee, along with the other students, is forced to obey. One of the students reports that the master has ordered everyone to gather in the Huiyan Hall. He looks excited, hurrying to fulfill the task. Lee and the other students wake up on the floor, their faces expressing incomprehension and fatigue. They decide to hurry up to avoid getting into trouble for being late. Lee lies on a straw mat, looking pillowy and pensive. He contemplates silently, as if gathering his thoughts to make the next move. The disciples gathered outside the Huiyan Temple, which is located on the grounds of the Qingfeng Temple. Many people could be seen standing in front of the building. They all seem to have been summoned to the building by the master's order. An elderly master standing in front of the crowd asks with a slight sarcasm if everyone is present. His face is scarred and his gaze expresses arrogance and contempt. Lee stands among the other students and looks at the master, not hiding his displeasure. A thought flashes through his mind. What is this old man up to now? The master begins his address to his disciples by informing them that last night someone tried to escape. He mentions that among those who tried to escape were 2 of his personal disciples. The whole situation causes the others to be seriously tense. Behind the old man were the bound disciples lying on the ground surrounded by smoke. The master walks between them and states that he is deeply saddened by their action. The master continues his speech, recalling the rules of the Shishan Dunhua sect, rewards for merit and punishments for misdeeds. Lee stands among the other disciples, listening attentively to the master. The moment comes when the master is about to announce their fate. One of the bound students, with panic in his eyes and his mouth taped shut, lets out a muffled scream. He realizes that he is facing punishment and tries to express his fear. Lee stares at the scene, watching the bound students. His thoughts resound with mockery. Have they been caught yet? He thinks their attempt to escape is pathetic and unworthy. Bound students rise into the air, tied with red ribbons. The master makes a gesture with his hand and loudly utters the command, "Open," as he performs his ritual. His face contorted in a burst of anger, and his intentions are clear. "No, nothing is clear to me." Amidst the eerie scene, the old man summons an unknown black force that takes the form of a dark vortex with wriggling tentacles. The students scream in pain. The people around them watch with apprehension and horror. Lee, sensing what is happening as just another illusion, comes to the conclusion that everything around him is just his own hallucination. He calms down, convincing himself that these events were created by his subconscious and there is no reason to be afraid of him. Lee stands surrounded by people, radiating an aura of confidence that is colored in shades of red. Red energy or ominous light emanates from him, amplifying his presence. Lee convinces himself that there is no need to be afraid of what is happening. Tentacles emerge from the dark vortices, threatening to attack Lee. Lee looks at them anxiously. A whirlwind of tentacles bursts out of the blackness. The power controlled by the old man frightens Lee, and he reflexively backs away, realizing that it's not as simple as he thought it would be. Questions arise in Lee's mind. What is this creature, and is it possible that he himself created it in his mind? At first he believes it is just his hallucination, but then he begins to doubt it, sensing a real threat from the creature. Lee realizes that what is happening is beyond his normal hallucinations. Nothing like this has ever happened to him before, and his faith in the illusory nature of what is happening begins to erode. The old man, surrounded by red tentacles, is clearly in control of the situation. He speaks ominously of the intentions of those who stand in his way, showing his power and readiness for violent measures. The gathered people are greatly frightened by what they have seen. The old man reminds them to reflect on what they have witnessed, instilling fear and reminding them of his absolute power and willingness to punish disobedience. The Taoist reminds all those gathered that helping another to achieve immortality is a great merit. His words are intended to strengthen discipline and motivate disciples. The Taoist tells Li that if he attains immortality, he will never forget the kindness shown to him. Li listens attentively, showing little emotion. Tao mentions the traitors who tried to escape the day before and invited Li to join them. He is surprised that Li did not accept their offer and stayed. Li calmly says illusions, as if he realizes that what is happening around him is nothing more than a figment of imagination or magic. Li claims that everything around him is just an illusion created by his imagination. He has a strange confidence in his eyes, as if he believes himself to be in control of what is happening. Li stands in the center of a space surrounded by magic, fierce streams of energy directed around him. He shows no fear, stating that he has nothing to fear. The Taoist appreciates Li's stamina and recognizes his abilities. He touches Li, showing his power but also praise. The Taoist informs Li that he sees talent in him, and Li will now become an official apprentice and be in charge of the storage room. This appointment seems to elevate Li to a higher level. Li is confused as he ponders his new position. He wonders if he's really been promoted, or if it's all just a way to make up for the shortage of people due to recent deaths. The Taoist openly tells Li that his promotion is nothing more than a necessity due to the deaths of many disciples. He also mentions that Li, as a new disciple, must receive a Taoist name to finally join the ranks of the disciples. The mentor announces to Li his new Taoist name, Shenyang. This name symbolizes his new role in life, reflecting the beginning of his journey as a disciple with a new status. From this moment on, Li is no longer the same person he was before. Li stands, his thoughts full of doubts and questions. He realizes that the previous Shenyang has recently died, and now he is to take his place. His new status brings a sense of uncertainty, but he accepts this fate. The Taoist gives Li a certain package, which Li is clearly confused about. Inside are 5 pills, and he doesn't understand what they are for, waiting for an explanation from his mentor. The mentor speaks of 5 pills, calling them immortal elixirs that he personally made. These pills have the ability to extend life by 10 years and provide a significant increase in strength. Li examines the 5 pills contained in the bundle. They look strange, and the mentor explains that taking them not only increases life expectancy but also enhances abilities, which could save a life in a dangerous situation. The mentor goes on to explain that disobedience will doom him, but obedience will be richly rewarded. Li and the other disciples listen to his words, realizing the gravity of their situation. Li looks closely at the pill. He has a suspicion. He ponders how the elixir was made and whether it was created using human sacrifice, as something about it seems frightening and impure to him. Li manages to retrieve a bundle of pills and other items. He is surprised that he actually managed to do so, and feels relieved that he was able to get them out of the situation. Li is sitting in a hospital bed. A jade pendant and a gold bracelet along with elixirs are lying on the bed. He plans the next step, to test the authenticity of these items to see how important they are and what powers they may contain. Li resolutely prepares to test the amulets and pills he has received. He realizes that these items could play a crucial role in his future and help him survive in the world. Li wondered if the potions could be as real as the bracelet and jade pendant. He contemplated trying one of them to test their effects. Nana bursts into Li's room, calling his name loudly. She is clearly annoyed about something and rushes to Li to find out what is going on. The girl angrily explains that she had to escape from class by climbing over the wall to come here. She warns Li that he must have a really good reason, or her anger will not be stopped. Li tries to calm Nana down and nudges her towards the door so as not to attract attention. The girl continues to be angry, but Li looks around carefully, checking to see if everything is all right. The two of them end up in the ward. Li closes the curtains and doors, trying to create privacy, while Nana stands back and watches him warily. The girl, seeing Li acting strangely, becomes nervous. She doesn't understand why he is closing the curtains and asks him worriedly about his intentions. Li reassures the girl and assures her that everything is fine and no one will hear them. Nana still has doubts, but Li continues to insist on his plan. The girl apparently softens a little, her face expressing a mixture of interest and caution. At that moment, Li holds out an object to Nana. Li tells the nurses at the hospital not to be so nosy and better pay attention to the ICU. He asks them to stay out of their way and stay out of their business. The girl picks up a strange green amulet and asks perplexedly what it is. Li, with a serious and slightly tense expression on his face, warns the girl, "Don't make a sound, listen to me." At this point, Lee says something to Nana, which of course surprises her. After a few days, the situation changes. Lee sits on a bed in a room with a hospital atmosphere. His hands are clenched into fists as he reflects on the fact that even his own parents think he's crazy. He is pained by this realization, but he holds on. A tear rolls down his cheek as he thinks of Nana being his only savior. She's the only one willing to listen and understand him. Lee mentally pleads with Nana, "You have to believe me." A voice from the intercom brings the room to life, announcing that Nana has arrived again. The sound of her name elicits a genuine rush of joy and relief from Lee. He leaps out of bed, his face lighting up with genuine joy. He shouts her name enthusiastically, showing how important her visit is to him. Lee looks out into the corridor, convinced that his guess is correct. Nana has indeed returned. But for some reason, there was a crowd of guards in the corridor. As the guards pass by, Lee deftly slips away in the other direction. Lee, noticing the guards in the hallway, worriedly asks what's going on, clarifying if anything serious has happened. The man warns Lee not to leave the room unnecessarily and to close the door as soon as possible. The guard adds that if Lee sees someone named Old Man Lu, he should report it immediately. He mentions with annoyance that the man is probably distributing some drugs again. Lee thinks about how Old Man Lu was able to escape from the ICU despite his fragile condition. Then he dismisses these thoughts, deciding that his main goal is to find Nana. The aerial view of the modern building emphasizes the size and significance of the place. The crowds of people in the square create a sense of an active but restless city. Lee meets Nana on the roof of a building. She informs him that she commissioned him to appraise the jade pendant and gold bracelet he gave her. Nana says that the pendant was a genuine antique with an estimated value of at least 400,000 yuan. She also says that the bracelet is also made of real gold. Lee, with a slight shadow of a smile, replies that this is exactly what he expected. His confidence and calmness at this moment emphasize that he knew the truth beforehand. With a sudden chuckle, Lee declares that he is not crazy. His emotions seem to be on the edge between despair and triumph. Lee rushes toward Nana, shouting her name and repeating that he's sane. She tries to calm him down, asking him to slow down, but his impulse is too strong to restrain. Lee jokingly remarks that his ability is indeed real and it's best not to rush his recovery. With a smile, he asks Nana if she's ready to become a rich lady, as if there's more to the light, playful tone. Nana, slightly irritated by his words, reacts sharply, calling him a petty brat. Her harshness is reinforced by a light punch, to which Lee responds with a pained grimace. Nana says with a serious look that she is not interested in money and that Lee's health is more important than any ability. She asks him to promise to continue his treatment and take his medication, or she will refuse to help him. Lee, looking straight ahead, thinks for a moment. His silence seems to reflect an inner conflict and an attempt to make an important decision. After a moment, he agrees, promising to follow her request. However, at that moment, an unknown person appears behind them. Nana's sudden scream catches his attention. Someone had just picked her up and grabbed her. A strange man attacks them, grabbing Nana by the shoulder. Lee reacts instantly, his eyes wide with shock. Lee rushes towards his attacker, loudly demanding that he let Nana go. His determination shows that he is not going to stop in front of the threat. At the moment of impact, something heavy falls on Lee's face, causing blood and staggering. Nana, seeing Lee lying on the ground, screams his name in horror. Lee lies on the ground with a bloodied face, his weak voice breaking into calls for him to stop. An unexpected vision of a strange creature explains that a mysterious object can extend life by 10 years and grant temporary powers. However, this chance clearly comes with a heavy price, which remains a mystery. Nana, calling desperately to Lee, asks if he is all right. Her eyes full of tears reflect not only fear, but also a deep concern for him. Her gaze reflects the figure of Lee, who is eating something red. Lee, despite his condition, stands up, exuding a strange and frightening glow. His silhouette, surrounded by flames, becomes a symbol of rebirth and the inevitable reckoning. At this moment, Lee burst from his seat. The attacker's face expresses a mixture of surprise and horror at what is happening. Lee, with eyes burning red and filled with rage, makes a lightning-fast lunge, crushing the enemy. His attack is accompanied by a powerful flash that emphasizes his awakened power. Lee finishes by pinning his attacker's head to the ground in a rage, demonstrating absolute superiority. Lee sits over his defeated opponent. He speaks threatening words, indicating that all of this could have been stopped if he had listened to him. Lee's red eyes glow with madness and a frightening smile appears on his face. Soon, someone is chained in this frightening room. A desperate voice demands to be set free. Lee is in a straitjacket, chained up, his rage not yet abated. He tries to explain his brutality as an act of defense, clearly justifying his actions. A man in glasses, apparently a doctor, listens to Lee but notes that his actions were not self-defense but revenge, emphasizing the seriousness of what happened. The doctor inquires about Lee's abilities, hinting that what he has done is beyond normal human capabilities. His words hint at suspicion or interest in Lee's unusual abilities. Lee looks confused, his gaze expressing fear and indecision. He realizes that revealing the truth could lead to unpleasant consequences. The doctor urges Lee to think carefully about his words, warning that lying will lead to problems. Lee, in a straitjacket, tensely ponders how to keep the secret about the elixir. His internal monologue emphasizes how important it is not to let this information leak out. Lee stares into the void, immersed in his thoughts. The doctor tries to get Lee's attention by asking questions and raising his hand, as if he wants to test his reaction. However, Lee remains unconcerned, causing the doctor to become increasingly worried. A sharp shout, spoken with rising tension, as if trying to bring Lee back to reality. Soon Lee finds himself back in his world of hallucinations. Lee accepts his fate, noting that any action is also a decision. There is reconciliation and a slight bitterness in his voice. Dark images of the past come to life, creating a mystical tale of family heritage and ancient wisdom. Tai Chi becomes a symbol of their strength and rooted philosophy. Ancient figures represent blessings and help in hard times. Their images are filled with reverence and respect, elevating their importance in history. A group of people walk through unknown space, and talk of three worlds adds to the sense of destiny. One of the men is thinking aloud about spiritual purity and purpose. Lee has just joined the temple and is now trying to settle into his new environment. His mentor notes that he has much to learn, hinting at difficulties ahead. The mentor assigns the older apprentice to help the newcomer to settle in. The senior accepts the task, but the newcomer's silent gaze expresses hidden doubts. As they leave, the foreman says it's getting late, and so they can all go to dinner. Lee feels a stare that makes him uneasy. He wonders why the stranger is looking at him so intently, as if trying to understand something. The teacher points to the eldest disciple, Zhengquan, who was left as the only inner disciple after his brothers betrayed him. He is tasked with helping the newcomers and keeping order in the temple. One student warns that Zhengquan can be petty and does not tolerate disrespect. His reputation requires caution in his interactions. Newly accepted as an apprentice, Lee questions his older brother, wanting to better understand his responsibilities. He hopes that he will be able to settle into his new life quickly. Lee learns that his first task is to manage the warehouse, which is far from the teachings of immortality. This path to true knowledge is still a long way off. With amazement, Lee repeats the words about the ways of immortality, realizing how mysterious and unbelievable it is to him. It seems that his interest is beginning to turn into an obsession. Lee exclaims that he wants to know if the master can really teach him how to become immortal. His face flames with eagerness to know the truth, but he remains calm. The older disciple reassures Lee, saying that the master's powers are indeed impressive. But he adds that he should worry less and focus on the present. The path to immortality is described as the privilege of inner disciples such as Zhengquan. For the rest of us, it remains a distant dream, causing Lee to be disgruntled. Lee ponders immortality and the prospects this place offers. His eyes are full of confidence that something worthwhile can be found here. An idea matures in Lee's mind that he needs to keep fighting to reap more benefits. The motivated thought strengthens his resolve. The alchemy room in Qingfeng Temple looks ominous. Everything around it is filled with dark magic, and the red flashes of fire give the place mystery. The master is watching the process in the alchemical vessel with a wild expression on his face. Powerful magical energies begin to burst out of the vessel, blinding everyone present. Mystic spheres emanating a red glow manifest above the vessel. They surround everything around, creating an atmosphere of destruction and energy. The red ball concentrates its power, transforming into something more powerful. Golden streams of magic begin to flow out of the green vessel, filling the room with bright light. The master reacts enthusiastically to what is happening, saying that the result is beyond his expectations. The magical currents continue to swell around them, causing chaos. Lee realizes that his previous goal of just making money was too narrow. His outlook becomes serious when he decides to change his priorities and take a broader view. Lee realizes that if he manages to realize his new ability, his potential will become almost limitless. A crazy smile appears on his face. The master, holding a green glowing potion in his hand, addresses Lee, hinting at its importance. Meanwhile, the magical currents create a powerful vortex around them. You want part 2? Write the secret word in the comments. Crazy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put a like. See you later and bye-bye.